minimum 20,000 square feet, it would move into an actual project.
So they're basically on hold until they can find a tenant per se.
Right. I think it's wise to keep it committed. I would continue to evaluate this in and among other items that are happening in the downtown and continually monitor this. But Class A space is being built in the region. And we heard from Urban Partners as our consultant that it's important to be able to respond if a client is looking for that quality of new construction and wants the downtown location. And this is our opportunity to be quickly responsive.
So, moving forward with the actual types of revenue and expenditures within the Economic Redevelopment Fund, basically this fund doesn't charge money for any services. It doesn't generate monies like the CDBG block grant does, where we're getting annual grant and entitlement amounts. Instead, the monies that's in this fund ongoing on an annual basis typically come from pay-go or current year transfers in from general fund, some grants, state grant monies, but again, nothing like CDBG where you have a guaranteed annual resupply of dollars. And so in our fiscal year 18 budget in the general fund, we included transfers from the general fund, pay-go money, if that's what you wish to call it, in fiscal year 18 of $125,000. When we started the budget process, I tried to include $200,000, but it soon became unrealistic in trying to balance the budget when we got the April 14th letter on our constant yield notice. The other thing, though, in fiscal year 18 that's good news for us is we have been successful with securing some state community legacy grants to help with two types of incentives. One is this Facade Grant. Previously, the city had it was called a Sign and Facade Grant, and we had local monies there. And so we were able to secure monies from the state to do just the facade grant side, which is typically a little bit higher dollar, more expensive to do than just the signs. And so we were excited about that. That was $25,000 total. We anticipate there's a line under expenditures that says sign and facade, and you'll see it actually has $20,000 in there. $10,000 of that is going to be from state community legacy. The other $10,000 is city local funding and match. So again, when you look at the monies that we have been able to do in there in fiscal year 16 and 17, it was barely any, $6,300 in 16, $5,000 in the current year. So we're going to be able to go from that up to $20,000. Again, I know this is not a huge dollar impact, but again, it's a nice way to enhance our incentive programs and do a little bit more. The other one is for down payment. So we've created two new accounts almost at the bottom of the expenditures. You'll see it says citywide down payment and city center down payment. The first one, which reflects $38,473, would actually be our city local funded. That's the monies that we will put in there. And that helps secure a total of $50,000 grant, again, from the state. We anticipate that we can spend 25 of that, which is city center down payment. You can see the 25,000 right underneath that, and then the remaining balance in fiscal year 19. So again, able to do some of the things that we were maybe doing through our down payment program with the downtown and citywide residency program that we started under the Invest Hagerstown, but now we're able to do it in a different way where we've got some local match that we're putting in to help secure state grant monies to help us continue that type of a incentive package.
Right, and those programs would be to encourage home ownership.
Correct. So at the top, you see $210,000 in the state community legacy grant. I talked about $10,000 was for facade. $25,000 was for down payment. There's $100,000 there actually 25 in fiscal year 18, 75 in fiscal year 17. That is a prior community legacy grant that we were awarded to utilize and do improvements at 4353. And that's something that we intend on completing and doing before we go to closing. The last remaining $150,000 that's reflected in that $210,000 above is for home ownership programs, similar to what we were able to do with 278 South Prospect Street, where we got a community legacy grant award for about $100,000, and we purchased the building or the home, the residential home, for $75,000, and we've since already have sold it. In the rest of the expenditures for fiscal year 18, one of the things that the city is committed to do with our, and some of you are already aware that we have this 5-year rental guarantee contract in place, but as part of our partnership with University System in Maryland, and also with the developers that helped change the Patterson building over to the first student housing, there's a 3-party contract where we've literally just agreed that for the first 5 years, if it's not at full capacity, both USMH and the city will help contribute towards any of the vacancies. And so you'll see that for fiscal year 18, it's only $10,000, and that's because we've been very fortunate. I think, right now, very little vacancies. I think the last report that we had for a 6-month total was maybe a total of 5 days vacancies in one of the units, so.
Very nominal.
Great, yes. And the largest dollars that we typically spend, aside from the first third grant money, is our PEP subsidized rent payments. That program by far, one of our most popular programs and one we continue to receive many applications for. So we have $131,500 there. And Jill would tell you, as she's told me, when I had to reduce the general fund transfers in from the general fund from 200 to 125. And so I really can use that money in my PEP program. I don't want to have to turn people away. And I agree, we don't want to turn people away. We're trying really hard to continue to find ongoing funding sources to help keep all the programs up and running.
And I would add, Michelle, that line item also includes, under the PEP program, the grant back equal to taxes paid for 5 years to the property owner who goes through the renovation minimums of the PEP program. So it's that piece, the grant back equal to taxes, as well as support of rent payments for the first set of tenants that come through a renovated building.
And lastly, one of the things that we really looked at, and is something that we will definitely look at bringing back maybe in July and August, you will see under other financing sources, we have transfers from Upper Floors Fund of $50,838. Basically, I've asked Jill to consider and have staff come forward with a recommendation to Mayor and Council, really looking at, we have a separate fund for Upper Floors Fund. There's $50,838 we anticipate will be in there with a little bit of interest that we earn. If we're not going to utilize that fund in the manner in which we were previously, and basically what we're utilizing that money for is a match to help secure state grants, maybe it's time that we consolidate that fund and move all the remainder of that monies into here.
One possible recommendation for that, and we've used some in past fiscal years from that line item, to obtain state funding to help reinforce our Hagerstown revolving loan fund and to use as the matching component, because it operated as a loan fund, that we were able to leverage our money with grant money from the state, and it was on a ratio of 2 parts state to 1 part city to help reinforce the fund balance of the Hagerstown revolving loan fund. And I think there could be options on how to utilize the 50, but that if there is still state money available, and we're looking into the availability, I know they changed the match ratio to a 1-to-1 ratio, that we could still use it in a leverage format to stretch it further.
So I think the last thing I would just like to note, within this specific fund, if you look in fiscal year 17 and estimated actual, at ending fund balance, the very last line, you see 1.3 million, and you think, ooh, fund balance, 1.3 million. that must be, we must have money sitting around we can utilize. And the answer to that is, the majority of that $1.3 million is in our holdings, in our properties, 4353, 170 West Washington, the Massey Building, the Alms House, some other things. Just to kind of put it in perspective, our cash balance as of the end of last month was approximately $195,000. So $195,000 in cash of that 1.3. The rest really truly is pretty much tied up in some small loans and properties that we own. I think that was pretty much it for Economic Redevelopment Fund. Unless you had further questions.
I'm good. Everybody else good?
Okay.
Paul?
No, I'm good. The $1 million that's in the FY18, that's all for the urban improvement project, correct? The bond issue, this one was for, the fiscal, this one here,
Yes,
that $1 million, right?
yes.
Okay. So the talk that we had at one point of trying to recreate the First Third program in some other name, fashion, what have you. Nothing.
Yeah.
But that's, that's not reflected in
Right.
anything. Yeah.
Now, in the conversation I had before this meeting, we talked about the availability of future funds that we may be able to use on individual projects as they would pop up, so.
I gotta imagine you have a stack of applications from when that program was first going on of other possible, I guess, proposals or something like that.
We did have expressions of interest as the funding was committed. I think the community understands that the program did not have a sustainable
Right.
source in order to keep it going. So at this point, I think the need for incentives is there because as you see with what it takes to renovate a building and bring it back online, I am hopeful that in the state legislation and the potential for the CRIS bill could be an avenue for us with a very powerful economic development financing tool, if we're successful in the next legislative session.
Okay, anything else from you tonight?
Just that in the packet, I had included for the general fund, similar to the spreadsheet that we looked at last week, I just added one new additional column, and that just literally is labeled after the May 9th meeting. And I think that that's where we left off and seem to all have consensus. So when we initially ran the ad and had the public notices for both the fiscal year 18 budget for the city of Hagerstown as well as the tax rate, it will have been based on one number, but when we actually introduced the ordinances, I have adjusted the ordinances for the tax rate. So the introduction of the ordinance that's in your packets and it's included tonight will not be at the 5.5 cents that was proposed, but at the constant yield rate, which was a 2.8 cents difference. Likewise, on the actual budget side, the changes that we looked at and the adjustments that we agreed, I think we agreed to last time, impacted the general fund and a little bit in the capital improvements fund. So the grand total in the actual budget for all funds on the uses of funds changed from what was advertised. Again, was updated in the introduction of the ordinance for this evening. So as long as we were all still committed to this column that we reviewed last time, that is how I changed and adjusted in the introduction of the ordinances for tonight.
And I think for the public hearing, then basically, you open the public hearing, Michelle will make those statements that it's the changes that we've gone through in our work sessions and how the changes differ from what was advertised, make a few statements there, and then the mayor will open it up to public comment. And that's at 7 PM.
Yep.
Okay.
Sounds like a good time. Anything else from anybody at this point? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. We're gonna take a break until 7 PM.